Time to get started. Welcome to the first COVID-19 Renewal Recovery Task Force meeting. I'm hoping everyone can see and hear me, but just in case you're having any technological difficulties, we have Mecklenburg County staff, Chris Daniels, as one of the hosts. And so if you're having any issues throughout the session, just private message him and he'll help you troubleshoot and get back on track, which he's had to help me already. And also, before we move on forward, I'd like to ask you to mute your microphones to limit distractions and background noise. Okay, so I'm going to share a PowerPoint to help lead us through the agenda. I can find it. Here we go. Okay. So here's the issue I'm having is I think you can see me and you can see the PowerPoint and each other, but I can't see you. So I've asked Dina and Chris to help, and Victoria and Jerome to help monitor your faces in case I don't see or hear anyone who wants to ask a question or make a comment. But we do have a very tight schedule and we do have time built into the agenda items for questions and comments. And so I'll guide you through that as we move forward. So at this point, I'm going to introduce myself just very briefly and turn it over to Dina. So welcome you, Dina and Victoria. I sent you out an email with just a little bit about me and my credentials. I did retire from Mecklenburg County last July for 30 years of service. And the last 15 years I spent in human resources as a learning and development training specialist and facilitator. And once I retired, I started my own consulting business. COVID-19 happened, and so I have been a little slow, but I have had some work, and I'm really excited about working with everyone on this really, really important task ahead. So with that, Dina, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Megan, and I'm going to ask again, please mute your phone or mute your microphone, please. We're getting a lot of background noise here. I don't know, Jessica, Montana, I don't know. Thank you. Okay. Well, I'm Dina DiOrio. I'm the Mecklenburg County Manager, and I want to welcome you to the inaugural meeting of the Board of County Commissioners COVID-19 Recovery and Renewal Task Force. I want to thank you for your commitment to these important issues, and I look forward to providing support to the task force. We are joined today by 3 members of the Board of County Commissioners. We have at-large member Trevor Fuller, District 2 Representative Vilma D. Leek, and District 5 Representative Susan Harden. Speaking of support, I am joined today by members of my team that will also help with the work of the task force. My executive assistant, Mary Jean Davidson, will be at our meetings taking notes and providing our minutes. Chris Daniels is with our Enterprise Project Management Division and will be the host and coordinating the meetings. And as we move forward, you'll be receiving meeting invites from him, so please don't delete them. From our Information Technology Department, we have Scott Cato, Dan Scudder, and Chris Cowles, and they'll be managing the 3 breakout rooms for our meetings. And finally, from our Public Information Department, we are joined by Danny Deal and Albert Spear. And as I've mentioned in one of my emails earlier to you, we are going to be live streaming the audio portion of these meetings on YouTube. And that is what our public information team will be doing. So again, I just want to thank you. I look forward to supporting you. And with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to one of your fabulous co-chairs, Victoria Avramovic, and she will get us started. So thank you.
Thank you, Dina. And I just want to echo a lot of what you just said. I'm really thankful to everyone for volunteering for this task force. This is no easy job that has been set before us, but everyone obviously has passion and drive for this purpose. And Jerome and I both look forward to helping the group to find consensus and develop some good actionable plans for our community, and helping all of us really be reflective of the leadership in our community and truly turning something to our community that can be useful. So I'm really looking forward to working with you all and getting to know everyone and getting to know some parts of our community that I haven't got to dig my heels into yet. So really looking forward to working with you folks. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jerome, who's going to talk a little bit about our roles on the task force.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you, everyone, for joining this call and this task force. I echo what Victoria and Dina stated, that I'm extremely excited to have all of you participate. I'm excited about participating in order to hopefully make a difference in the communities that we live and serve. With the task force, we do have different roles and responsibilities. And just want to go through some general roles and responsibilities of the chair, co-chair, Victoria, and I, as well as roles of the working group. So just a couple of bullet points here. As far as a co-chair, Victoria and I will kind of chart the course and action and the goals of the task force, which are already, for the most part, outlined in the Board of County Commissioners resolution. We want to stick to that. We are charged with calling the meetings to order, adjourning meetings, introducing speakers, facilitating discussions of the meetings, and ensuring that the meeting is proceeding in a timely manner. We will also develop agendas and facilitate any ad hoc committees as needed. We want to ensure that the outcomes of the meetings are recorded and distributed to all participants. And we want to make sure that we remain aligned with the Board of County Commissioners' resolutions. And ultimately, we are accountable to the Board of County Commissioners to report out our findings. As far as the working group, or I should say members, which include Victoria and myself, we want to make sure that all members are attending and present in meetings, not just attending physically, but present and engaged. We value your subject matter expertise. We value your knowledge, your engagement, your collaboration. Often written materials may be sent out in advance. It would be greatly appreciated if you would read through any materials, read through agendas, be prepared with any required information prior to the meeting. Sometimes there may be a need for, in between meeting conversations, and I would hope that you would make yourself available for that. We want to, as a group, work in good faith and work collaboratively, especially when there are differing opinions and perspectives. And we want to be able to share information and develop a shared understanding of all the issues. So I just wanted to go over a couple of bullet points as far as our roles and responsibilities. Thank you. I think you're on mute, Megan.
All right, I confess, this is the first large virtual meeting I've had. I think you probably all have a leg up on me, so I ask for your patience, and please feel free to correct me and remind me to turn on and off my camera and my mic. But the next thing I just want to do is briefly reference the agenda that I sent out earlier. I'm not going to go over it topic by topic, but I hope that you had a chance to review it. And I want to let you know what the outcomes we hope to achieve today. As I discussed with Dina, Victoria, and Jerome, and those would be to have a better understanding of who is on this task force. And so that's one of the reasons we compiled the master roster with the photographs and a little bit about each of you. To have an agreement on the meaning of the resolution and the components that was passed by the Board of County Commissioners. And I hope that you have that material with you, because I'm going to ask or call on a couple of you to read one of the 5 components when we get to that point. To have an initial prioritization of initiatives, and that will be, that's what we're going to do in the breakout sessions. And so hopefully you have some lively discussions and be able to really start to filter what you want to work on first, not that you're not going to work on everything. And then last, to have a plan for next steps and timeframes. So that's just an overview of what we hope to accomplish for our time today. And then just some ground rules reminders is, if possible, keep your cameras on so that we can get to know each other. It's so difficult in this virtual world. The more we can see and hear each other, the better you're going to be able to collaborate. Mute yourself if needed when you're not speaking, and remember to unmute yourself when you want to speak. And lesson learned from me. Also, please refrain from interrupting others. We're going to ask that you use the chat feature to make note of any questions or comments. And while I'm not going to be necessarily monitoring that chat because the only thing I can see is the PowerPoint, Dina will be monitoring that and responding, if possible, to questions or comments as time allows. And if not, we'll compile all of that and take a look and give you feedback later. Also, Chris Daniels will be monitoring that for technology issues. Last, I just want to say, as you're sharing your opinions and listening to each other, it's very important to listen to understand, because we all come from different backgrounds. We have different experiences and different lenses. And so I think it's really important to respect everyone's perspective, understanding that we may be different, and we can be stronger by combining and collaborating to overcome those differences. The last thing I'm going to mention is I'm going to briefly go over some of the methods of decision making that will be utilized during this meeting and also future meetings going forward. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Member introductions. We have such a large group. There's certainly not time to go through and do individual introductions, and probably we'd lose half of you after the fifth one. So I sent you the master roster. You've got everyone's contact information. I'm still waiting on a couple, and pictures of them. And also just a little bit of why everyone volunteered to be on this task force, which I found very interesting. So I ask that you keep that available to reference. The other thing I want to mention is that I did not put on the master task list what your top 3 choices were for the substantive that's hard to say, areas, the priorities. And the reason I left those off is for the purpose of the breakout session, we wanted to have a voting to get those top 3 results. Knowing that might not end up being your top three priorities, and oftentimes when you connect votes with the name, people are biased before you even have a chance to talk to a person. And so that wasn't necessary. And if you're wondering why that was left off, that's why. Now for a little bit of fun, we're going to get this meeting started on a fun note. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Chris Daniels, and he's going to ask you in a polling format 3 questions. So I'm going to stop sharing, Chris, and turn it over to you.
All right, let me send this poll out, and you all should see a box pop up, and it will allow you to make your selections, and then we'll see those start coming in. Okay, so you should see that.
Now, can they go ahead?
Yes, they can go ahead and answer. There's some already doing so.
Okay. Chris, in the interest of time, I think when we get to about 2 minutes, if most everyone's answered, we could go ahead and show the results.
Sounds good. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Okay, so this is the first time we've done a poll and released it. Can everyone see the results? All right, great.
Well, this is very encouraging. The first question, how excited are you to be on this task force? Luckily, no one answered A, B, or C, so that's a very good sign, and hopefully that will continue throughout your time together. I like this next question. During these months of social isolation, what are you most grateful for? Spending more time with family, looks like, and no answer is number one, or other. No, excuse me, that's no answer. Spending more time with family. Maybe I should have put down spending time away from family if you could get them away, depending on if you have kids. And then we also have working from home. Of course, that's popular. And spending time on personal interests such as cooking, hobbies, reading, and exercise. That is awesome. The next question I cannot see. My go-to guilty pleasure binge TV watching show is. Did anyone add? Chris, can you see? We can't see anything if anyone wrote anything down.
I wrote Ozarks.
I don't think it was answered.
Okay, somebody was getting ready. Who has a guilty pleasure TV show?
I wrote Ozarks from Netflix. This is Jerome Williams here.
Oh, absolutely. I got my mom on that. She watched all 5 seasons in a week.
Yeah.
Any other good ones? Tiger King?
I'm watching Schitt's Creek because it's really symbolic of my life on the county commission.
I think you're telling on yourself.
That's the truth.
Well, we all have to have a little bit of downtime. And anyway, I just added that question for fun because if people did fill it in, you might have something to talk about and relive those episodes.
Can I put a shout out for Designated Survivor? It was created like 4 years ago. I had never seen it. And I have to say that whoever wrote that, it was like, could see in the future.
Is that
It's scary, but good.
Yeah. One more. Anybody want to suggest one more?
HGTV.
HGTV. Yeah.
I was going to say, I watch a show called Together, which is on Netflix. It's only 8 episodes, but it's 2 Asian actors who don't speak the same language and they travel to different countries to find their fans. So if you've missed traveling, it's a nice show to watch all the different countries.
Oh, wow. That sounds very interesting. Okay. Well, that was just a little icebreaker, get us a little bit warmed up. And with that, I'm going to move on to the agenda. So let me share my screen again. Okay, just very decision making. You probably are aware of these, but just a review. The first quickest way that decisions are made is the command method, and this is when decisions are made with no involvement. And an example of this is my decision not to include your individual rankings of the special areas in the roster sheet. It wasn't worth, sending out emails. Should we not? I just made that executive decision so that we can move on. With a command decision, there is higher risk because if you make the wrong decision or a decision that others don't agree with, there may be some conflict. The next type of decision making method is consult. And this is when the decision makers invite input from others. So consulting is a process whereby decision makers invite others to influence them before they make their choices. They gather ideas, evaluate options, make a choice, and then inform the broader population. And that method may be employed by Victoria and Jerome as the chairs in some of the decisions that need to be made, and they need to be made fairly quickly, yet they want to get some input from you all. Next is vote, and this is when you discuss options and then call for a vote. And we also did this when I asked you to rate the priorities or initiatives. It was a multi-voting system in which you all had the information from the Board of County Commissioners, and then you made an educated choice based on your experience and knowledge to vote for those priorities and service areas that you thought were most at risk or most important. And then the last method is consensus. And ideally, in this method, you want to allow everyone to talk until they agree to one decision. If you have enough time, this is a great way to make decisions and build teams. It's a great way to collaborate, but sometimes you don't have that time. So you can get mired in the discussion and it can slow things up. We are actually going to employ consensus when you get in your breakout sessions, and I'll give you more instructions on that in just a few minutes. So those are the 4 methods of decision making to keep in mind as you meet together as a task force, and also when you get together in your subcommittees, which I'm sure you'll be breaking into fairly soon. To make sure that everyone has a clear understanding of the resolution, I'm hoping that you have the document that the Board of County Commissioners, the resolution that the Board of County Commissioners passed with the 5 components. And I can't see you, so I'm going to I know you're going to get tired of hearing me talk, and I want to involve you as much as possible. So I'm going to call on one person to read one of the components and then the next and so forth. And let's get through them. And then at the end of those 5 reviews, I'll ask if there's any general questions. We don't necessarily want to get in a big discussion because I think that discussion is going to come when we get to the 10 bullet points of the priorities and the special interest areas. So I'm taking a chance here. Let me find my resolutions. Is Carrie with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Carrie, do you know where I am? I don't want to embarrass anyone if you don't have this in front of you because we're trying to save paper and you may not. And if that's the case, then I'll be happy to read them all. But this was the Mecklenburg County Board of County Commissioners, the resolution to form the Mecklenburg County COVID-19 Recovery and Renewal Task Force. Carrie, do you happen to have that available?
I do.
Do you mind turning to page 2? Thank you so much, by the way. And read the first one. Now, therefore, be it.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mecklenburg Board of County Commissioners does hereby establish the Mecklenburg County COVID-19 Recovery and Renewal Task Force for the purpose of addressing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in Mecklenburg County, and be it further resolved.
Okay. Thank you, Carrie, very much. You were the guinea pig. Let me see, is Greg in the house? Do you have this available or not?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Which part are you in?
We're on page 2, the second resolved, if you don't mind.
Oh, the second resolve, yep. That the task force's work to support the recovery and renewal of Mecklenburg County COVID-19 shall be governed by the following principles. A, that recovery and renewal should not be returned to business as usual. B, that recovery and renewal, above all, must be guided by adherence to public health and scientific expertise in order to assure the safety of those who live in our county. C, that excellent public services, public investment, and increased community resilience will form the most effective basis for recovery and renewal. And D, that recovery and renewal must address issues of equity that have been laid bare by the impact of the crisis, and be it further.
Thank you, Greg. How about Bernadette? Bernadette, are you in the house?
I am, but I do not have that in front of me.
Okay, that's fine. I'll go to the next. How about Jessica Montana?
Sorry, I was trying to look it up, but I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll read the next one. And that would be that the task force shall examine, surface, and help address COVID-19 impact issues that are specific to workers, businesses, public health, education, the economy, and the overall well-being of the residents in Mecklenburg County, and shall strategize around, formulate policy considerations for, and develop a comprehensive recovery and renewal plan of action or a limited series of plans to be presented and recommended to the Mecklenburg County Board of County Commissioners for approval and action in the following substantive areas. And I'm not going to read those because we're going to go over those one by one very shortly. The action plan shall include and incorporate recommendations from the county manager's business roundtable, and be it further, Harold, how about you?
No, I don't have it in front of me. I'm looking for it now.
That's fine. I don't mean to embarrass anyone. I'll just go ahead and read the last two. So, and be it further resolved that the county manager is directed and authorized to help form the structure of the task force and shall assign appropriate staff from various county departments, retain appropriate expert assistance, and recommend a budget for the task force work. And be it further resolved that the Board of County Commissioners will appoint the chair or co-chairs and members of the task force from nominations received from the board members and the public. Adopted June 2nd, 2020. Do we have any general questions, or are we good? Is it fairly clear? I can't see everyone, so if I don't hear anything, I'm going to move on.
Megan.
Yes.
Hi, it's Yvette. Quick question. I have a lot of emails.
I know.
Can you give me the date of the email that was sent that has this document in it? I just do not see that. The document that you're reading from?
Right. I believe that was sent a couple of weeks ago, probably from Dina.
Okay. It might be earlier on than what I'm looking through then. Okay.
We can send that back out and make sure that everyone has that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Megan, it's Liz Weiner. Just to let you know, I didn't get the roster. I didn't get the other one either. I'm not on the distribution list.
Let me make a note of that.
Yeah, I'm not there anywhere.
Hi, this is Cheryl. I didn't get the roster either. So.
No, you're not. I don't think you're on it either, Cheryl.
Oh, okay.
I will get that to you after we complete this meeting.
Are you going to send it? I'm sorry, this is Gina. Are you going to send it to everybody? Because I don't have that either.
Did anyone get the roster?
I got the roster, but it did go to my junk mail. I do want to say, however, Megan, I did not get the link to the breakout session.
Me neither. I didn't get that either.
Okay. Scott, we have you in the room. Can you make sure that they get that link? So Kevin, you don't have it, and who else does not have it?
Liz Weiner. In fact, when I look at the email you sent out yesterday that Dr. Sachs was nice enough to send me, I'm not on it. A lot of people, actually. There's quite a few people that are not on it.
Yeah, I don't have the link either. Cheryl.
You don't have the link to the breakout session?
No.
Nope.
Okay, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you don't have the link to the breakout session, put a note in the chat. And so as we move forward with the agenda, we can have the IT people work on that and get you the link. Liz, are you an alternate? Is that correct?
I don't know what the final numbers were, but I was originally, yes.
Okay, the alternates are not going to necessarily participate in the breakout sessions. Am I correct in that, Dina?
Right. So the way that the alternates work is the alternates should be at the meeting so they can hear what's going on. But in terms of participating, an alternate would only participate when somebody else drops out, and we're not at that point yet. So that was the reason that the board selected some alternates. But we can certainly talk more about this offline. But for today, if we want to get them some links to some breakout rooms that they can listen in, I think that's fine.
Okay. Scott, if you want to add Liz to our breakout session, that's fine.
Sure. Liz, just put your email address in the chat and I'll forward you the appointment.
Okay, so two things I need for you to do before we move forward. If you didn't get an invitation to the breakout session, put that in the chat box, and our IT people will make sure you get the invitation in the next few minutes. And if you did not get a copy of the roster, put that in the chat, because I don't want to resend it to everyone and clog up your email any more than I already have. Are we good? Okay.
What about the resolution?
Dina,
We can resend that to everybody as well. We sent that out early on, but I'm happy to resend it out to the whole group.
Okay.
And Dina, I just put the resolution in the chat as well. If anybody wants to click in it, it'll come up real quick for you.
Okay, we have an experienced virtual meeting person with Carrie. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carrie.
You're welcome.
I'm glad I asked the question. Any other questions around the resolution? I'm sure there's going to be, but for the purpose of the meeting, we just wanted to get a general agreement on understanding. Okay. So next, I'm going to hand the baton over to Dina, who is going to share with you the context and clarification of the 10 substantive areas. I'm just going to say priorities and initiatives. I don't know why I have trouble with that word, that have been identified that will be addressed by this task team, because they weren't necessarily self-evident, at least when I went over them. So Dina, do you mind briefly doing those?
Sure. And I just, there were the 10 bullet points that the board put in the resolution. They call them the impact areas. And so what I've done is I've tried to frame them based on my understanding of what I thought the board was thinking. But, all the members of this task force, and again, if you're not talking, if you could put your mic on mute, that would help. Based on your own experience, you may have a different perspective. And I think that's what's going to really bring these 10 bullets to life. So if I read something and you say, oh, no, that's not it, it's something else, that's good. Make a note of it, because when you start to have conversations about these, all of your collective experience is really going to help frame these issues and the plans and actions that you want to take. So this is really just a first cut of where we think we might want to start having a conversation. But again, it's just the start. It's certainly not the end. So the first one is access to healthcare and eliminating health disparities. And COVID-19 brought to the forefront the impact of health disparities in our community. African Americans and Hispanics were disproportionately impacted by the virus. So it's something that we already knew, but COVID-19 really brought to life and highlighted the impact of health disparities in our community. Mental and emotional health. The economic impact, social distancing, uncertainty, and fear have impacted the mental and emotional health of many people in our community. And the lack of access to behavioral health services have left many with no emotional supports. Economic recovery. COVID-19 has significantly impacted small business in Mecklenburg County. Support for this sector is critical to the overall recovery of our county. Nonprofit recovery and human services. Community-based organizations continually struggle to raise money to provide services, and COVID-19 has left many organizations struggling to survive. Education and childcare. Closing schools and going virtual highlighted the educational inequities that exist in our community. Lack of educational supports, including broadband access and parental ability to support remote learning, will leave many students behind. Working families and vulnerable populations. Some families that live paycheck to paycheck were ill prepared for the impacts of COVID-19. Many are essential workers that had to continue to work despite the potential dangers to their health. Vulnerable populations, particularly seniors, were significantly impacted by the virus and make up the majority of the deaths in Mecklenburg County. Housing and homelessness. Many in the community that lost jobs due to the pandemic have been unable to pay their rent or their mortgage. The tsunami of evictions the community will experience will impact an already fragile affordable housing market. Our homeless residents were also adversely impacted in that the lack of stable housing left them vulnerable to the virus. Jobs and workforce development. Many jobs were lost during the pandemic and will not return in the short or even the medium term. Job training and workforce development opportunities will be critical to our recovery. Food security. Access to healthy food is critical to overall health. Lack of access to healthy foods leads to underlying health conditions that left many in our community susceptible to COVID-19, particularly African Americans. Arts and culture. This sector of the economy was severely impacted by COVID-19 when everything was forced to shut down and will likely be one of the last to reopen. A thriving arts and culture are critical to the overall economic health of any community. The sector not only employs artists, but also has a ripple effect in other sectors like hospitality. So that's, again, just some context around those items. I'm happy to send these out as well to the group after the meeting's over, so it can be sort of the start of that discussion. But I know I do have 2 or 3 board members on the meeting today, and I don't know if any of them want to add to what I've already said about these 10 bullet points. I think I saw Commissioner Harden is on, as well as Commissioner Fuller. If you wanted to add anything to that, I think that would really help frame the discussion.
No, this is Commissioner Fuller, and thank you, Dina, for that. I think you've set it out very clearly, and I didn't plan to speak at this meeting, but I just wanted to thank you all for putting yourselves forward to serve on this important task force and the important work that you're going to do that to our community, that you are doing this work. And so I'm really very excited about all of your input into recovering and renewing from this pandemic. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I also want to thank my colleague, Commissioner Fuller, because this was really his idea, his brainchild, and I look at just the citizen input that we have right now on this, and it's thrilling to see all of these voices at the table. I mean, for me, I think the exciting thing about this is that your voice is at the table, and we need to hear from your voice as we chart through this difficult time for our community and come up with hopeful solutions. And so your voice is critical, and your input's critical, and staff's listening, and commissioners are listening, and the community's listening. So thank you.
At this time, if anyone has any questions or needs some clarification on those 10 areas, please unmute yourself and you will be heard. Okay. Victoria, I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm asking you, I know that you mentioned resiliency and the importance of it. Did you want to add anything else regarding these 10 areas and how resiliency plays a part in that?
So sure. So when we had kind of a pre-planning conversation, and I think we'll probably dig into this probably in our next meeting, but the word the word resiliency is it's kind of a buzzword in multiple industries right now. So you have a lot of energy sustainability organizations where resiliency means one thing to them, and they're really talking about resiliency of the energy sector and our ecosystem and so forth. And then you also have in local government, we're looking at resiliency with regards to our planning efforts, our long range, short range planning, transportation. Economic development uses the term quite a lot when we're talking about industries and workforce development. I know Carrie Cook has a pretty strong footing in workforce development, and that's something that we talk about is resiliency with career pathways. And then looking again at the industries that make up the economy regionally and locally for us and looking at how resilient they are. And actually that was a buzzword before the pandemic. And now it really has kind of taken on a little bit different of a definition. And the same thing in healthcare. I think Jerome can speak to that too. They use resiliency in a different way. So it's one word that it has a lot to unpack in it. So I want us to be cognizant that it has a multitude of definitions that all come into play under this resolution. And I think that's something that when we get into the strategy and kind of assessment piece of it, we'll really start to unpack that. But know and be cognizant that a lot of us probably have our own experience with that word, but it really means a lot. And we'll have a very big definition at the end of this task force work.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Can't hear me. Now you can hear me, can't you?
We can hear you.
Okay, well, I'm glad I didn't say anything inappropriate. Okay, thank you for that. And again, are there any questions or comments about those 10 areas before we get into the breakout sessions shortly? All right. When we get into those breakout sessions, if you do have those 10 areas printed out or be able to refer to them, it will be important because I'm sure you're going to want to discuss probably all of them at some point. And so to have that reference will be very helpful. Chris and Scott, for some reason, my PowerPoint is not advancing, but I have this little pencil on the screen.
It looks like you turned annotation on, Megan. Might need to go up to the top and turn that off.
Okay. There we go. All right, now it's time for your breakout sessions. And most of you hopefully did receive the teams that I divided you into. And the way I did this is I looked at your areas of experience and interest and expertise in your profiles that you sent me and try to have a cross-section of different types of professionals, experts, experiences, so that we don't have all healthcare people in one group, all homeless or human services in one group. So hopefully we do have a very mixed crowd in each of the breakout sessions. So that's what I did, and it was somewhat random. And as you see, Victoria, Jerome, and I will be the leaders in the breakout sessions, and we'll help to keep the conversation going. What I do want to ask you to do, because I'm not going to be in all the breakout sessions, is that shortly after you get in the room, that you pick a spokesperson, because at the end of 30 minutes, you're going to be joining this big group again, and we're going to ask for you to provide us with a summary of what your discussion was like and what you ended up with regard to the top 3 to 5 priorities of those areas that have been listed. So don't wait till the end to pick a spokesperson, because then everyone's panicking because maybe they missed something. So also, again, have those 10 areas available so that you can refer to that. Now, the voting results of the 10 areas, these were the top 3. access to healthcare and eliminating health disparities, education and childcare, and working families and vulnerable populations. So without you meeting each other, this is basically what the total vote was. And it can change, especially after you get in your breakout session. And then once all three groups are combined and you see where everyone fell out or where the different priorities fell out, it could even change again. So you may want to make note of these because you will not have a PowerPoint in the breakout session. I'm going to give you just a second to jot these three areas down.
Are these in order from most? Number 1, 2, 3?
Not necessarily. They were all within 1 point, 1 vote. They were all like 10 and 11 votes each. All right. Hopefully you took note of that. And now it's time to go to your breakout session. So let me again give you some instruction. These 3 questions I have, those are just questions that will help guide your discussion. The goal of your session is to share with the group at large the top 3 to 5 priorities your group came to consensus on. You'll select a spokesperson in your session who will provide a 5-minute or less summary of your discussion and your top priorities. So again, I know that you've probably, hopefully seen the quick little video I gave with instructions. I'm going to walk you through this. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to click on Leave This Meeting. We're going to maintain an open, this meeting is going to be maintained while we are in a breakout session. So we have some staff that are not going to end this meeting. It's just going to be on pause. So you're going to leave this meeting, go to your subsequent breakout session invitation, click on that link, and join in your breakout session. Once I say everyone leave, we're going to give you about 30 to 32 minutes in your breakout session, so it's important that you monitor the time, to go through these questions and be ready to report out. We will have IT staff hosting the meeting, and they will give you reminders of when you've been talking for 20 minutes, you've got 10 minutes left, and 5 minutes, because it's really important that all breakout sessions end at the same time and rejoin the larger meeting so that we aren't waiting. Okay? Does anyone have any questions? I know it's a bit cumbersome. We're still working on this technology, and hopefully by the end of September, we'll be able to have the breakout sessions in one meeting. But I want to ask, are there any questions?
Megan, I have a quick question. I have a request for my WebEx meeting reminder to join the meeting at 4:45. If I click that join meeting, will it just take me there, or do I have to exit this meeting?
Chris and Scott, you want to take that?
Scott's not on the call, but I believe you'll need to leave this meeting and join that meeting.
Yep, and he can click join. Yep.
I can just click join meeting, is that correct?
Oh, well, you need to leave the one first, and then you can click join meeting. And then when we end the breakout, you can just click join on this original meeting once you leave the other one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Megan, you're muted.
Right? It looks like we almost got everyone back. I'm going to give like another half minute. While we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and display my PowerPoint again for the talking point. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Now it's time to debrief with the large group, and I'm not sure about the other two breakout sessions, but our conversation started really getting going with the last 5 to 10 minutes. So certainly we need more time to discuss this. So I'm going to ask for Team A, that would be Victoria, your team, to begin by sharing with us the key points in your discussion and what top 3 or 5 priorities you came to consensus on. Are you there, Victoria?
Sorry, I did not unmute myself. Gina volunteered to be the spokesperson for the group. So if she is back on, I'll hand it off to Gina. And if she's not on yet, then I can get us started.
I'm here. So Victoria, please jump in if I leave anything out. But I think that I think we all agreed that it was very difficult to assess what is the most important. We kind of talked about almost like a boat that is leaking has multiple holes leaking, and like which hole is the most important. You know, they're all important. So what we decided, we first started going back and forth and which one would be what's most important. And then we decided that it would be better to just kind of create 3 buckets and put each one of those things into one of the buckets. So we talked about kind of what those buckets would look like. And then we talked about, basically we identified the 3 buckets as being health, which it would include mental health, community, economic development, and public services. And then we talked about another challenge is like part of the big issue here is that there's so many dimensions for everything. So one of the other dimensions we talked about was to prioritize things in terms of long-term and short-term that will be required and short-term effects. So we decided to, and then we talked about kind of what would be preventative measures. So for example, for mental health, preventative, that would be more, we would need to think about preventative measures. So we would need to address that, what's going on now, but also preventative measures, because as more and more months go along, then we're going to have more and more suicides, more and more depression, more and more discord in the family, child abuse, spousal abuse, all that. And so we talked about kind of preventative measures or interventions versus active interventions, something that we have to do now to address the issue now, like reducing the number of infection rates or, versus more kind of a long-term effect. So what is it going to look like in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? For example, such as healthcare, disparities in healthcare or food deserts. No one in the city deserves food deserts. So we all need to kind of look at, we looked at it in those ways. Victoria, I did not take a picture. I'm not sure I took a picture. No, I did not. Sorry. About you created the slide or the spreadsheet where all those things would go. Do you think you can talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So as Gina said, we really, what we all kind of came to consensus on was a lot of these things were related to each other. So we put them in those related buckets, and we did have some crossover. And I love the analogy of, the boat with multiple holes, because that really is what we're all working with, right? So we created the 3 buckets. So I'm going to go through what we plugged into health. So under the health bucket, we put access to healthcare, eliminating disparities, mental, emotional health, housing and homelessness, food security, education and childcare. And then under that community and economic development bucket, we had food security again, economic recovery, including small business, jobs, and workforce development, arts and culture, education and childcare again. And then under public services, that bucket, we really had mental health, emotional health, nonprofit, recovery, human services, food security, arts and culture, and education and childcare. And then to go back to, as Gina said, talking about the short-term, long-term, also looking at when you have more time, because if we had more time, we would have liked to been able to dig in and see the order of how things happen and how effects will occur with these things under these buckets, because all of these 10 things really are related and some dependent upon one another. And I think that was why it was a challenge for us to say one has more priority over than the other, because they all really need attention and attention now, which is why we have this task force, right? That was the group. Gina, thank you for being the spokesperson. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Gina and Victoria. And so we're going to move on, and so we can make sure that we have enough time to hear from each group. So I'm going to call on Team B that Jerome helped lead. Jerome, are you there? And who is your spokesperson?
Yes, I'm here, and Bernadette will be our spokesperson.
Hello. So we had a great conversation. A lot of it is resonant of the previous group, so I'm not going to necessarily repeat the same thing, which is good. Is a good sign that even when we separate it out into groups, that we seem to be in alignment. The things that I would say that are additive to that is absolutely we agree with the aspect that mental health is an absolute critical part of overall healthcare. And the things that we all seem to be aligned on, it seemed like we had a lot of alignment on the buckets themselves, but where we think that there's a lot of opportunity for discussion and for where this task force can really make an impact is the way that we execute that in terms of the intentionality behind the particular actions that we're going to take for these different bucket areas, and looking for, as a previous group mentioned, long-term systematic change. None of us are here for the one and done project. And so how can we connect these different areas such that they're feeding into one another? And we talked extensively about the fact that, the one way that we can be very intentional about this and create systematic change is focusing and having a very deep dive into who the target populations are that we are trying to impact most greatly. And so while the vulnerable populations was listed as an area, we felt very strongly that that's actually the target audience for all of these changes that we're looking to implement, and specifically Black and Brown communities and communities that have been underserved historically. And the last thing that I thought and again, I'm sure we all wish we had more time, but we talked about, a lot of the things that we talk about are aspirational, and there are people right now who are just trying to, get the baselines of human necessities. And so that is where we think a lot of effort can be made. So specifically around food security, homelessness, education is definitely high on our list. But if you're hungry and you're not sure where you're going to sleep tonight, that's probably a first priority. Jerome, I'll let you.
Yeah, thank you, Bernadette. That was a great summary of our discussion. What I want to reemphasize from the group's discussion is that we talked about system changes. We feel that at this particular time, a number of us have been engaged in one-off projects, and given what we know that has occurred over the last 5 to 6 months between COVID and social unrest, that the problems that we are talking about require system changes. And so foundationally, when we look at these areas, that we're trying to affect change in, we're not looking at kind of one-off projects. We're looking at, sweeping changes that would impact in a favorable way the vulnerable populations that described.
Thank you, Team B. That was a great report, and it is reassuring to hear the commonalities amongst the groups. And the next team that's going to report out was the one that I led, and that is Team C. And Cheryl volunteered graciously to be our spokesperson after an awkward silence, but appreciate it. I'm sure the other teams might have had that too. So Cheryl, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, definitely team members jump in if I leave anything out. But, our discussion got off to a slightly slow start. But one thing that emerged was, and that's aligned with the team A and B, is that we definitely saw the interconnectedness of all of the 10 buckets, so to speak. And it was hard to tease out which was which was most important. We agreed with the three areas that, made its way to the top. There was no disagreement with those, but we did come up with some additional two that we thought was worth discussion. But before we even got there, we had a very interesting discussion about the task force's purpose and why we were doing this exercise. And out of that discussion, we kind of talked about the importance of clearly defining what we mean by recovery and renewal. What does that really mean? We had a discussion about that. We didn't have the answers, but because we were trying to put that recovery and renewal lens, we felt it was really important to add two additional areas. And one was job and workforce development, and the other was housing and homelessness. Did I leave anything out, group?
You did a great job, Cheryl. Thank you very much. And it's interesting because there were some commonalities amongst the three teams, but it also sounds like the discussions went a little bit different. In the group that I led, we did come up or had consensus 3 to 5 different priorities, and the others grouped them together. And regardless, we're starting to discuss. And I think that you're starting to hone in on the priorities and the initiatives and the areas that you need to focus on, because it's so difficult to focus on everything at once. And I'm sure there's going to be more discussion before everything's finalized with your next steps. And Victoria and Jerome may actually address that when we get to the end of the meeting with the next steps, because we haven't necessarily decided anything for certain right now. Appreciate the first attempt at the breakout session. Again, as we move forward through September, the technology should get easier to use and more seamless. And hopefully by then I will have more practice turning on and off my mic. And at this point, I'll let you know that we are a little bit ahead of schedule, which is fine, because I think that it will allow more time for Jerome and Victoria to talk about what to expect next. And of course, who doesn't like to end a meeting a little bit early? But I do want to provide just a summary of what we have gone over today. Certainly, Dina started off by welcoming everyone and giving you a little bit of background of how the task force was created. And then we heard from Victoria and Jerome regarding the mission and the roles of this task force. And then we got into the technical issues, and that some didn't get the breakout session invitations. And luckily, our IT staff were on hand, and I'm hoping that they were able to resolve those issues quickly and everyone joined their breakout session rooms. Dina, we reviewed the resolution. Dina then summarized the 10 areas to focus on, and we asked Victoria to give us some more information on the concept of resiliency, how it relates to the 10 areas. We then broke out into our sessions and had a guided discussion on the top 3 priorities that you voted on earlier. And actually, I wrote down that what I heard in the summaries when you came back and debriefed, there was a consistent analogy of boats and buckets. So I think that's interesting. You talked about system changes, the interconnectivity of the areas of concern, long-term and short-term impacts, and definitions. What are the definitions of renewal and recovery? And so what I'm hearing from the summaries of your discussions is there needs to be more clarification on what important words mean and what exactly the mission is. And so that you can all get more clear on the direction to head and, you know, what needs to be done next. And then what might be extraneous that we don't need to address. And that, Victoria, Jerome, do you want to add anything regarding the summary?
I think that you hit all the points already, and as Victoria and I kind of talk about next steps, I'll highlight some of those things that you mentioned, Megan, because I think they were important. Victoria, didn't know if you had any.
I agree. I think you covered the summary well, and we'll touch on some of those other things during next steps.
Okay, and because we do have just a couple of extra minutes, does anyone want to correct anything that any information I provided or clarify? Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Victoria and Jerome to share with you their ideas about the next steps and possibly some timeframes and expectations. So Victoria, I'm turning off my mic.
So I think one of the most important things we have to kind of figure out is what is everybody's capacity to meet? What is the frequency? The reality is we're probably never going to find a day that works for everybody, but what's the day and time that's most reasonable that you think you can participate the most? I believe we are recording the audio, right, of all of these meetings. So if you do miss it, you can plug in some earbuds and have some relaxing replay of the meeting during your downtime when you can't attend. But I think we need to go ahead and set a schedule. It's possible we may have a schedule now, and in 3 months we may revise it, or in 3 weeks we may revise it. But I think we just need to kind of get everybody's temperature on, are we meeting twice a month, every 3 weeks? What is the frequency that you have the capacity to meet? And what is the desire? So feel free to.
So this is Gina. I'm normally kind of pro less meetings, but frankly, I feel like we're trying to plug in the holes in the boat kind of late. So I feel like we need all hands on deck, and like on a regular basis. So I would be, I mean, I have a lot of Zoom meetings, but I would be okay with meeting once a week, but that's just me. But because I feel like there's such urgency, and I think we're really starting late.
I agree. And while I don't think anybody really wants to do this any more than necessary, it's definitely something that needs to be addressed sooner than later, quicker. And, you know, quite honestly, I can commit to being available to whatever frequency or consistency that's needed, because I think that's what we need to kind of do right now, is get as much information compiled together as we can, and then maybe start figuring out how to actually try to get this information to people that can make things happen.
This is Kevin.
Oh,
Kendrick.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is Kevin. I would echo what Gina and CJ said, but I would also say that it's easy to schedule more meetings early and then scale back as we go, as we find it necessary. I'm not sure if every week is necessary right now. I would be comfortable with every 2 weeks. Certainly, this is a good time, but I'm amenable to what the group wants to do.
This
This
is
is
Liz.
way we can do this.
Oh,
I think the
this is
best
Liz.
way we can do this is to make a survey and just send it to everyone. I'm more than happy to do that and just send it to everyone on this call, so people can just think about their time and their schedules and provide answers that way.
Fair enough.
And Dina, we can get Mary Jean to send out a survey, correct?
Yeah, we can. The other thing that you can also consider is just to say we're gonna schedule them every other week from 4 to 6 on Wednesday, and everybody can block them out. I just don't want us to spend a lot of time trying to get survey results and then have people all over the place, and then we can't reconcile that. I'm happy to do it, but I think there might be a more efficient way to get where you want to go. I just offer that. It's up to you all, however you want to handle it.
Dina?
I agree with that.
Yeah, committee decision perhaps.
I was going to say, I agree with that only because I come from the land of the multiple surveys and they can get extreme. It's a great idea in theory, but I'm 100% behind that concept that you can get very bogged down with all those scattered pieces of information and then having to coalesce them into one combined idea before you can even make any progress. I think that everybody who agreed to be on this task force was amenable and committed to putting in what we needed to do to get something actually done. So I actually like the idea of making a commitment. This is when it's going to be. Let's deal with that. We can always change it as we go forward, block it out, because you got to get started at some point. Doing the survey, it sounds good in theory, but I think it's going to take more time to then take that concept to then get something on the books. So I'm like, let's just make a commitment. I'm completely.
Someone make a command decision and.
This is Liz.
I'm
Thank
totally
you.
okay with a command decision on the date and time of this.
There we
I was
go.
going to say that. This is Liz. Thank you, everybody. The question I have is, do you think that we should work also at the same time we get dates is understanding what our actual charter is and how long it would take us to do that? So is this a 8-month task force, 7-month task force, 10-month? I don't know, but that might guide us a little bit on how frequently we need to meet. And then once we have those goals kind of flushed out, we could, like she said, break up into groups or whatever and do our separate research on where we need to go. So I'm looking for a little, and that might be coming, so I don't know, but that would be my first pass. But as far as frequency, I think it would depend on how test what the final output is going to be.
Right. And this is Cheryl. I also wonder if, our meeting will be the task force as a whole, or will we break out into subgroups and meet in between meetings? And if we're doing that, then how often do we need to meet as a whole? Just throwing that out there.
Actually did discuss that, and I think the answer is yes, that will occur after we get through, because I think our next meeting we are going to need to do more of that charter development. So I think every 2 weeks is going to be perfect, because that's going to give us some time in between to pull work and products together so we can react after we've had a meeting. Because while we're all very committed, we're probably going to come up with a lot of things that's going to take some resource reconciling between the meetings and so forth. So yes, I do believe we will have meetings in between, and we will have those ad hoc committees, and that's going to be that opportunity when folks that are really passionate about a particular area, you're going to get to lead those ad hoc committees. But I do agree, and I think a lot of folks have the same thinking as Liz. We really need to define timelines here. Really, we could say the work could go on and on and on forever, right? Because a lot of these things are never going to end. But we do need to give ourselves some type of timeline so that we're working towards that ultimate goal. So my recommendation, it sounds like we're in agreement, set the meetings every 2 weeks. It sounds like Wednesdays 4 to 6 is okay. We can retool if we need to with the meeting dates, and those ad hoc committees will come along. But it sounds like the next meeting really needs to give us the opportunity to dig into our purpose and our abilities to achieve that purpose.
Do you think in that time, this is Liz again, that you guys could work on a preliminary? Do we need to get some preliminary timeframes or some preliminary goals, or do you want to do that as a large group?
The only thing that I'll throw out here is that the resolution does say that the board's expectation is that the work will take a year. Now, we could decide that you all could decide you could do it quicker, but that's the time frame that's in the resolution. So maybe that's helpful to frame that up.
Yep.
I also want to throw out that, I'm sorry, Dina. I also want to throw out that don't forget, when you read the resolution, it's not returning to business as usual. And so while I completely understand we want to dig in and get to work and come up with some recommendations, I also think that the challenges that we are confronting, these challenges are not COVID-19 challenges. I think everyone understands clear on this call. These are not COVID-19 challenges. These are challenges that COVID-19 ripped the scab off of. And so the reason I'm saying this is I want to make sure that we give some really intentional thought to the recommendations that we make, and not just just check a box.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I would just like to request the meeting start a little bit later. 4 o'clock is a little bit difficult for me. Typically, I don't get up until 5. So, and if we're going to be meeting that frequently, it'll be difficult for me to do that on a regular basis. So,
and this
So
is
it's the same thing.
well.
I was just going to say, it's the same thing for me. I work every day until 4:30. So if we decide on 4, I'll just have to be late every single time.
So is a 4:30 start time a little bit better? So we need to push it to 5? Are we trying to do after business hours?
4 is good for me.
What I'm concerned about is pushing it to people's evening hours, kids' hours. I have all my children, so.
Let me ask everyone to mute your mic if you're not speaking. There's a lot of background noise, and this time it's not me.
If we're meeting every 2 weeks, do the meetings have to be 2 hours? That might make it easier to schedule to both accommodate the people who can't start till a little later and who want to end a little earlier, like 4:30 to 6 instead of 4 to 6.
Yeah, so I would agree. Probably after we get through meet, understanding our purpose role, we probably can dial it back. So what I would recommend is let's try 4:30 to 6 next time, and if we find we're struggling to accomplish what the meeting goals are, then we'll retool. That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Okay.
Jerome,
sounds good.
It sounds like we've got some meeting scheduling set up. Sounds like for next week, we probably need to work on kind of taking that resolution and fine tuning it into some actionable items for us as a board. We've got our timeline. I can actually play around with the timeline and kind of work backwards. So if we say from a year from, Dina, are we a year from the approval of the task force or a year from our first meeting?
I would say a year from your first meeting.
Okay, so I can work backwards on a timeline and kind of give us some general milestones on when we might want to have achieved some different things throughout, just generally. And then that can kind of give us something to play off of at our next conversation. And then hopefully when we wrap up with that next meeting, we'll really be going to take some concrete actions moving forward on how we tackle some of these issues. Jerome, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that is spot on. You and I have a lot of work to do before the next meeting now.
Are we going to be having a lot of social distancing lunches coming up?
A whole lot, yes. And looking forward to it.
Me as well.
Victoria, Victoria, I do have a question for the group. Is there anything that you want them to do prior to the next meeting? Any homework?
So definitely read the information Dina sent, the pre-read, because I think that was one thing that should be important for everyone is we want to see things that are already in play under these 10 items. We don't want to recreate the wheel. There are some things where we're talking about full systems changes, but some things are systems that are already starting and we just want to support and elevate. So dig into that. Dig into the resolution if you haven't read that. And when we come back, have questions about those programs. And if even if you've got a lot of questions beforehand, we could potentially look at how we can kind of start maybe a bank of questions. I don't know if we can create a SharePoint site or something like that, Dina, where we can, so that way we're not having an hour's worth of questions and we can kind of vet some of them ahead of time. But those are my two recommendations, to look through that and start connecting with everybody. If you see some folks that you had some interest, go ahead, start connecting, start email chains. This is a big group. A year is a long time, but when we've got this much work ahead of us, we need to kind of quickly orientate ourselves as quickly as we can with each other and start forming these good working relationships. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you, Victoria. Actually, I was going to say the same thing, that now that everyone has the profiles and the contact information, I would encourage you to all reach out to at least one other person, have a conversation with at least two other people before the next meeting. But with that, I need for everyone to double check what I sent out, that roster with your contact information. Since some of you did not get emails, I need to make sure that we have the correct emails. And also make sure that we get you the documents that you were missing. And so you will have those in hand for the next meeting that you can refer to as needed. So if you'll do that, send me any corrections. I will revise it and send it back out. And I do have the notes of the 3 people who did not receive the roster, and I'm sure that there might be a couple more that were included on the chat. So with that, our time is almost up. And because this is our first virtual meeting, I want to do a very quick, what went well, what should we change? Because we did have some hiccups, and I have learned now, I hope, to mute my mic when I'm not speaking. But I just want to open up to get your thoughts on what worked well. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing it with the group at large, you can put it in the chat. And we'll try to make adaptations to make it more seamless and easy the next time we get together. So does anyone want to volunteer what worked well?
This is Gina. I like the breakout sessions. I'm not a huge fan of breakout sessions unless you have like a specific directive. You take this, you take that. But I thought this one was, because we have so many people on the call, I thought that was really good.
Okay, thank you, Gina. Who else?
This is Jasmine. I also would like to say I am a fan of the breakout sessions, just because it gives everyone a chance to speak. Just creating those smaller groups if they have anything to comment. I think overall everything went pretty well, but I would say probably suggesting a better system on the whole tag teaming on who's going to speak next, because it can get hectic. We had some few hiccups, like you said, if more than one person is trying to speak and then trying to figure out who goes first or whatever. So I don't know if there's a way through the chat, if you can say whether you like to say something. I'm a little more familiar with Zoom, as someone else mentioned earlier, but if there's a way for us to put up a system in place where we can make sure everyone gets that opportunity to speak without talking over each other.
That's great, Jasmine. Thank you so much for that suggestion.
Megan, this is Kevin Kendrick. I know that I think a SharePoint site has been set up for this task force, I think. Would it be possible also to have, or is it feasible to have some resources that we could refer to and maybe even add to that SharePoint site, like the economic mobility study that was done in Charlotte several years ago, that I think has a wealth of information in it that speaks to some of the needs I think we're going to be addressing. I think that would be a good read for all of the members here if they haven't seen it already.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm imagining Dina can answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me go back and I did set up a group for this task force to be able to schedule meetings and send information out. So if that is a SharePoint site, and I'm just not 100% sure, we can certainly use that as a place to put materials. I can put that report in there, but let me just follow up tomorrow and see kind of what I need to do, and I'll get back with everybody on that.
Okay, we have time for one or two more comments. What worked well or suggestions for changes? Okay. Victoria, Jerome, do you have any words of wisdom to leave us with? Or are we just ready to everyone go have some dinner?
Megan, I want to ask a question of Victoria.
Okay.
So just since I'll be scheduling the meetings for the next meeting, are we saying 2 weeks from today at 4:30 to 6? Was that the decision?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So Megan, I don't have any words of wisdom other than just to thank everyone for all of their feedback and participating. Everybody really brought forward some really great comments, and I see we have a lot of creative and very passionate people. So keep that momentum going, and I'm looking forward to continuing this work. I'm looking forward to that next meeting.
Thank you, Victoria. And with that, I'm going to sign off, and I want to thank you so much for your enthusiasm and your patience as several of us worked behind the scenes for the last couple of days to try to make this as smooth as possible, and we'll get better at it. But I appreciate you hanging in there and your participation. I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.